We're good? We're good. Hey, good morning. Holy smokes. We got a few people in here. We're under the number that we're supposed to be in. We're social distancing, but we're in church. How awesome is that? That's awesome. Like, that's awesome. I was just watching Jesse's story. That story brought tears to my eyes. Like, just powerful. Powerful. There's this passage. In a couple weeks, we're going to be starting a new series. The series is going to be, we're going to go through the book of Romans all summer long. All summer long, we're going to go through the book of Romans. And Kevin's going to kick that series off for us. And here's the interesting part. In that series, Paul opens up the book of Romans and he says these words. He says, "Oh, I long to be with you." Because he didn't get to be with his church. He didn't get to be with his family. He didn't get to be with his friends. And I got to tell you, this has been the words that have been resonating in my heart. Oh, I long to be with you. And it feels good. And like I said last week, David wrote, it feels good to be in the house of the Lord. That comes out of Psalms, I think Psalms 117 or somewhere around there. But it does. And it's amazing that you take this for granted until you don't have this. I thank God for all the people that are watching online. I thank God for the fact that we have technology and that we can sit in our living rooms and that we can be with friends and family. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, we had our neighbors over to our house on a Sunday morning and invited them in, and we took communion, and we had family over to our house on that Sunday morning, and we took communion and we watched the online service. And it was wonderful. But it does feel good to be in the house of the Lord. It does. Yeah. And so before we get going into today's message, I just want to give you a couple things that are on the landscape. This Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m., we're going to host a special prayer meeting for business leaders. That business leaders have taken a real shot during this time. Both of my kids own their own business. And business leaders have taken a real shot. Some people are back to work. A lot of people aren't. And so if you're a business leader, if you're a business owner, manager, if you oversee people, we're asking that you come out, bring your friends, bring other business owners. This isn't a downtown Vineyard Church thing. We're just saying we want to pray for your businesses. We want to pray for business leaders. We want to pray for business owners. And so this Sunday, from 6 to 7 p.m., we're going to gather in this room, and we're going to have a good old-fashioned prayer meeting. Joni and Jesse are going to lead worship for us that evening. It's going to be a very simple worship set, and then we're just going to get down to prayer. And so I'm encouraging you to show up for that. And then next Sunday, May 31st, we are resuming regular church services. Yeah. And it's really interesting to me that this is a big deal to me. This doesn't have to be a big deal to anybody else. But I see lots of my friends posting, the church is open again. The reason we're using the language resuming is because the church never closed. The church never closed. We didn't close. We may have had church in our homes, we may have had church in different places, but we are resuming that which we have been doing for 2 centuries now. We are gathering. We are gathering in the house of the Lord, and so we will be resuming church service next Sunday. We will be in full compliance to the governor's wishes and guidelines. We're going to really honor those. We're honoring those this morning even. We will have children's ministry. We will have child care. And we will do it in a very, very safe manner, in a way that honors the governor's wishes. But we will be resuming our services next week. There will just be one service. It'll be a 9 o'clock service just like right now. So there's only one service. It's at 9 a.m. next Sunday morning. And we're asking that if you're sick, that you stay at home. we're asking that if you have a fever, if you have cough, if you're nervous about gathering in front of other people, don't let people pressure you into church, because we have a wonderful team that's put together a wonderful online experience. And so we're saying this, that if you're comfortable gathering, let's gather. I believe that we're better together. Let's gather. If you're comfortable staying at home, stay at home. And you can be looking for a video from me tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be putting out a video that'll be on Facebook. It'll be on our website, and it'll explain everything we're doing through that video. And so here's where we're at. So 3 weeks ago, we started a series. This series is called The God Who Sees Me. Today we're going to talk about that. We're going to continue in that particular subject. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 16 in just minutes. And so you can flip over to Genesis chapter 16. And today, the particular talk that we're doing is the God who redeems me. I don't know about you, but one of my very favorite things about people's faith is their story. That's my favorite. I love to sit and have people tell me their story. And the great part is that if you've encountered Jesus, you've got a story. You've got a story. I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing stories about how God shows up in their life when they seek Him. I love hearing stories about how God redeems people when they seek Him. I love hearing God and His faithfulness to people's stories. As a matter of fact, I've been asking this question the past couple weeks. What part of your story are you most proud of? Have you thought about that? You've got a story that relates to Jesus. What part of your story are you most proud of? What part of your story are you thankful that God redeemed? It's a powerful question to ask internally. My wife and I, we were having this discussion earlier this week, and the question, I asked her the question, and she said, you know what I'm most proud of? Is how God worked in our marriage. Like when Linnea and I first got married, we were so young, I won't even tell you how young we were because you would be shocked. We were so young that we couldn't get a pastor to marry us. That's how young we were. We asked 9 different pastors to marry us, and each pastor said no. And the reason was because of our circumstances and because of our age. And it was so amazing that we were so young that people would come alongside us and say, you guys are doing what? You're getting married? And they'd say, you know that kids that get married, teenagers that get married, you know that 99% of all kids that get married, they divorce in the first 18 months. You're like, yeah, but we love each other. And they're like, everybody says that. And then it goes along a little bit longer, and we make it the 18 months, and people come along and they say, oh yeah, but you know that kids that get married, when teenagers that get married, when they get married, they generally don't make it 3 years. Then we made it 3 years. And I said, yeah, but you know, statistically, 50% of all marriages divorce, and they do so in the first 7 years. And then we made it 7 years. And then we made it 10 years, and then we made it 15 years, and 20 years, and 30 years, and now we just celebrated 32 years of marriage, and I love that God redeemed our story. I love that. I love all of that piece. I love as a part of my story that I grew up, and man, I was work-centered when I was in my younger years. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I was just so work-centered. And as my kids grew up, I was like just not really kind of in that moment. And I love that God redeemed my relationship with my kids. I have wonderful kids. I have a son and a daughter, and they're both amazing. They're fantastic. And we have the best relationship. That, as a matter of fact, we had dinner with my daughter and her husband last night. They said, hey, Mom, Dad, you guys want to come to dinner? And we sat out on their patio, and we ate tacos. But they wanted to have us in their home. Tonight, my son and his wife, they will come into town. They're going to stay at our house, and we're going to hang out tomorrow. And I love that God redeemed my kids' relationship with me. I love that. I love all of that. If you were to look back in my yearbook, my junior high yearbook in 1984, And if you were to turn to the pages that says most likely to, you'd find all kinds of most likely to people, most likely to become famous, most likely to be an actor or an actress, most likely to be a bajillionaire. And if you found my name, it would say most likely to become a pastor. Here's the interesting part of that. It had nothing to do with how spiritual I was in ninth grade. As a matter of fact, it was completely opposite of that the kids in my middle school or junior high class voted me most likely to become a pastor because God must have something big planned for this guy. And it wasn't because things were good. I can tell you, this morning, whatever your life circumstance is, I'm so glad that we serve a God who redeems stories. That's what I'm glad about. We serve a God who redeems stories. And this whole idea from this particular series comes from this passage we're going to read today. It's found in Genesis chapter 16. It's the story of three people: a man named Abraham, a woman named Sarah, and a servant girl named Hagar. Here's what you need to know about the story: that Abraham and Sarah had been promised that they were going to have a child. They had been promised that they were going to have a child, and now at this moment, Abraham's about 86 years of age, and Sarah's about 76 years of age, and they are way beyond childbirthing years. Anybody agree with that? Like when I 86, I think that's too old. Just think it's too old. It's old. It's old. Whatever, for kids. Not old for other things, but kids, yes. And so, as they come into this moment, God has promised Abraham and Sarah children. And so, there's this moment where they realize they're not going to have any kids, that God's not going to fulfill his promise. This is what they're thinking. And so they decide to help God out. And so the story we're about to read is crazy. And it's crazy, especially in our society. It wasn't as crazy in their society, but when we read this story, you're literally going to say, oh my gosh, these people are crazy. Right? All right, so let's read it. Here we go. Genesis chapter 16, verse 1. Now Sarah, let me read it. Now Sarah, Abram's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarah said to Abram, hey, the Lord has prevented me from having children. Why don't you go and sleep with my servant? Can we all just agree that's crazy? That's crazy. Why don't you go and sleep with my servant? Perhaps I can have children through her. And Abram agreed. That's crazy. That's crazy. Abram agreed with Sarah's proposal. So Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram had settled in the land of Canaan. So Abram had sexual relations with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to mistreat Sarah with contempt. Then Sarah said to Abram, this is all your fault. We all knew it was going to go that way. I put my servants into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me. Abram replied, look, she's your servant, so deal with her as you see fit. Then Sarah treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. This is where the story gets interesting. Verse 7. Then the angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness along a road named Shur. Then the angel said to her, Hagar, Sarah's servant, where have you come from and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah, she replied. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. And the angel also said, you're now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You're to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. For the Lord has heard your cry of distress. The son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a donkey. This son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all of his relatives. Verse 13. Therefore, after Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoke to her, she said, "You are the God who sees me." This is where we get this series. She has an experience where she experiences God, and when she's done, she recognized that God sees her, that God hears her prayers, that God is paying attention to her life. She also said, "Have I truly seen the one who sees me?" So that well was named Bir-lahai-roi, which means well of the living one who sees me. It can still be found between Kadesh and Bered today. So Hagar gave Abraham a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. Abraham was 86 years of age when Ishmael was born. Like, that's a crazy story. It's a crazy story, and it sits right in the middle of our Bible. It sits in Genesis chapter 16. It's a crazy story. But here's what I want to talk to you about today, because I think there's some important things to take away from this crazy story. The first is just simply this: doing the wrong things for the right reason will always lead you to the wrong place. Did you catch that? Doing the wrong things for the right reason will always lead you to the wrong place. I want you to catch this. Abraham and Sarah were doing the wrong thing, but they were doing it for the right reasons. They wanted to have a baby. They were getting old, and they felt like their time was like going too fast. And literally, their motive was to help God out. Hagar, she was doing the wrong things for the right reasons. She wanted to be a good servant. She wanted to honor Abraham and Sarah. She also wanted to be a part of what God was doing. I think lots of people do this in life. I think lots of people do the wrong thing, and they come to it with the right idea. Like, they're doing the wrong thing. They know they're doing the wrong thing, but it's not for the wrong reasons. Sometimes it's for the right reasons. It just happens to be the wrong thing. There's a passage in Proverbs 14, verse 12 and 13. And this passage is super interesting, and the Message Bible says it really, really clearly. It says, there's a way of life that looks harmless. But look again, it leads straight to hell. Sure, people appear to be having a good time, but all of that laughter eventually ends in heartbreak. You see, if you read it out of maybe your NIV or your New King James Version or your American Standard Bible, it would say, there's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. You're familiar with that passage. You see, I think lots of people do this. I've done it. There's been times in my life where I tried to do the wrong thing for the right reason, right? There's been times in your life where you've done the wrong thing, but you were actually trying to do it for a right reason. We've all done that before. Let me give you a couple examples. Have you ever borrowed money to pay off things that you knew that if you could pay them off, it'd put you in a better position in life? But then you didn't pay them off, you didn't pay off the things you borrowed, and then you had more debt than when you started from. I come across that story all the time. People that have found themselves in debt. They actually took out a whole bunch of loans for a whole bunch of stuff that they were going to do something with, and then other things came up, and they did other things with the money, and then pretty soon they owe the money that they owed before, and now they owe even more money. Credit cards. People use them like that all the time. Okay, have you ever done this one? Have you ever let a good family member borrow money because they promised you they would pay it back, and then do they ever pay it back? Come on. A lot of times, generally, no. How about this one? Have you ever let somebody sleep on your couch because they just needed a couple days to get on their feet? And then 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, 2 months later, they're still not on their feet and they're on your couch. Right? You're doing the wrong things for the right reasons. How about this one? Have you ever gone into business with someone? Like you've gone into business with someone because it was too good of an opportunity to pass up, and now you wish you would have passed it up. Scripture says a lot about going into business with people who aren't believers. Or maybe you got into a relationship with someone because everybody thought it would be a good idea. And then you get into that relationship with good intention, and then now you realize it was not a good idea. Like that's how it works, right? There's this powerful passage out of Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Like, I love God's word this week. I've really been just super impressed with just the idea that God's word is what guides our lives. That you can find direction for your life all through Scripture, no matter what your life's in and where your life's at. Isaiah 40, verse 31 says, "But those that wait upon the Lord." But those that wait upon the Lord. What's the key? Wait upon the Lord. Just wait upon the Lord. What would have happened if Sarah and Abraham would have waited upon the Lord? But those that wait upon the Lord, He shall renew their strength, right? He shall renew their hope. He shall renew them. You see, the key to living a life that honors God, just wait upon the Lord. As we said last week, He's hardly ever early. He's hardly ever early. He is never late. But those that wait upon the Lord. The problem is human beings, we don't like to wait. We get ourselves into trouble because we do not like to wait. But those that wait upon the Lord, He will renew their strength. Here's the second thing that I think you can take out of this passage. When God finds you, it's so He can redeem you. You need to hear that. When God finds you, it is so He can redeem you. You could even say it as where God finds you, it's so He can redeem you. When God finds Hagar, it was so that He could redeem her, not ream her. It was so that He could redeem her, not scream at her. Everybody has this kind of idea of God. Like He's out to get you, and He's going to call you on your stuff when you blow it. When you've messed up your life, God's going to find you and say, "Told you." Right? And that's never how it goes with the Lord, is it? It never is. That when God finds you, it's so that He can redeem you. It's so that He can restore you. It's so that He can renew His promise to you. Because when God finds you, it's so you can find Him. That's what it's for. When God finds you, it's so you can find Him. I love that passage in verse 7 of Genesis 16. It says, "Then the angel of the Lord found Hagar." Then the angel of the Lord found Hagar. Then the angel of the Lord found you. Then the angel of the Lord found you and redeemed your story. That your story, no matter where you're at today, is a story of redemption. Jesse's story is a story of redemption. And no matter where you're at today, it's a story of future redemption. It's what God is going to do. And the way that we know that God's going to redeem us in the future is because He redeemed us in the past. What gives me hope today is that God's going to redeem me in the future because He redeemed me in the past. This is what we hang on to. Psalms 49:15. Psalms 49:15 says, "And God will redeem my life." That's a powerful, powerful sentence. And God will redeem my life. This is David, King David, who we talked about last week. And God will redeem my life. And then in Psalms 19:14, he writes, O Lord, my Redeemer. This is the promise of Scripture. This is the promise that we hang on to as people of faith. So let me just ask you a couple questions. Have you ever made a mess of your life? You're right? Yeah, right? The reason we had 9 pastors tell us no, they wouldn't marry us is because we had made a mess of our life. The reason that God needed to restore my relationship with my children is because I had made a mess of my relationship with my children. The reason I was voted most likely to become a pastor, but nobody really believed that I was going to become a pastor, joke's on them, is because God redeemed my life. Have you ever made a mess of your life? Have you ever made choices you regret? Have you ever done the wrong things for the right reasons and ended up in the wrong place? That's everybody's story. You see, you don't have to be afraid of God. You don't have to wonder if He can fix it. Because when God finds you, it's so that you can find Him. I want you to listen to this song. I asked Joni to sing this song. It's a beautiful song. It's from J.J. Heller. And it's called Love Me for Me. Check this out.
Cries in the corner where nobody sees. He's the kid with the story no one would believe. He prays every night, dear God, won't you please, could you send someone here who will love me? Who will love me for me? Not for what I have done or what I will become. Who will love me for me? 'Cause nobody has shown me what love really means. What love really means. Her office is shrinking a little each day. She's the woman whose husband has run away. She'll go to the gym after working today. Maybe if she was thinner, then he would have stayed. And she says, who'll love me for me? Not for what I have done or what I will become. Who will love me for me? 'Cause nobody has shown me what love really means. What love really means. He's waiting to die as he sits all alone. He's a man in a cell who regrets what he's done. He utters a cry from the depths of his soul. Oh Lord, forgive me, I wanna go home. Then he heard a voice somewhere deep inside, and it said, I know you've murdered him. I know you've lied. And I've watched you suffer all of your life. Now that you're listening, I'll tell you that I will love you for you, not for what you have done or what you
powerful song. Powerful song. Here's the last point I want you to take away this morning. I think it's important for people to know. I think it's important for people to remember. There's purpose in your pain. Anytime you're in pain, there's always this question that people ask, why? Why am I going through this? What is going on here? What's the purpose of this? There's purpose in your pain. There's a passage in Romans chapter 8. It's found in verse 28. And it just says that we know that God causes everything to work together for those who love him. I want you to catch this. This is super important for me to say. It says, we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those that love him. It doesn't say that God causes everything. It doesn't say we know that God causes everything, period. It actually says we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those that love him. Right? So, Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. They were doing the wrong things, but they were doing them for the right reasons. And I love the fact that God redeemed their story. Because if God can redeem their story, God can redeem your story. If God can redeem my story, then God can redeem your story. That's what we have. We have a God who redeems us. God can use your pain for good. You know, if you go to the gym, it says no pain, no gain. And when I'm working out, I generally think that's a lie. I do. I'm like, this isn't true. But it actually is true. No pain, no gain. But in your pain, God can use your story for good. If you let him. If you let him. God can use things that other people have done to you for good. God can use things that you've done to others for good. God can redeem the poor choices you've made. God can redeem the heartache, the heartbreak that you go through. God can redeem failed businesses. God can redeem poor financial decisions. God can redeem marriages. God can redeem broken relationships with children. We have the God who redeems. We serve the God who redeems. Genesis 16:13. Thereafter, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord. She said, "You are the God who sees me." You are the God who sees me. This morning, whatever's going on in your life, whether you're in this room or you're in a living room or you're in a hotel room or you're in a coffee shop, God sees you. God can redeem you. God can restore you. The reason I have confidence in this is because God redeemed my poor choices. God redeemed my poor financial decisions. God redeemed my marriage. God redeemed a little boy and turned a little boy into a man of God. That's my story. That's Jesse's story. I hope that's your story. And so here's what I'm going to ask. As we go into worship, in just a few minutes, there's going to be some questions that come up on the screen. I would ask that you not check out yet. Not gather your stuff, not turn off the TV. Just give me a few more minutes. If you want to talk to a pastor, call 683-0900. That's our phone. And we have a pastor who literally has the phone right there in their hands right this very moment. 683-0900 if you want to talk to a pastor. And while we're not meeting together, just a reminder that all giving and tithing is done online. It's done through our app. It's done online. Don't forget that, please. And then don't forget that this Wednesday we're going to gather together to pray over business leaders, 6 to 7 p.m. And then next week we resume total regular services. You're going to walk into the room and our worship team is going to be here and our Brandy's going to be here, and Kevin's going to be here, and everybody's going to be here. And so we hope you're here too. And so here's the questions I want you to consider. Is there an area of your life that you would like God to redeem? Do you have an area of your life that you need to make right? And have you seen God show up in your past that reminds you this morning that he will show up in your present and in your future? And so as the worship team takes us into this last song, those questions are just going to hang on your screen. And I would just say, would you consider those? Would you not turn off your device yet? Just give us 4 or 5 more minutes. Let's worship.
All things have passed away. Your love has stayed the same. Your constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead are breathing in life again. You cause your sun to shine on darkest nights. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. The hopeless have found their hope. The orphans now have a home. All that was lost has found its place in you. You lift our weary head. You make us strong instead. You took these rags and made us beautiful. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Oh, Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. Our hearts adore. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. Our affection, our devotion poured out on the feet of Jesus. We love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one our hearts adore. Oh, Jesus, we